Monkey.
All right, what's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to Leadership and Living, episode two. Episode two, y'all. I'm happy to be here with y'all. House of our 10. Thanks for tuning in today. Today we're gonna talk about our next topic, following up, to the last one. If you didn't watch the first episode of Leadership and Living's episode one, make sure you go back and check that, a House of our 10 on YouTube. Today's topic. So we're gonna be moving forward. Last time we kind of touched on, what inspires you, who inspires you, how do you get your inspiration. And so today we're gonna talk about what did you do today to become a better version of yourself. That's right. What did you do today to become a better version of yourself? And this is actually something you can ask yourself every single day, because this is a process. It's a continuation on trying to figure out how we can, of course, commit and become the best that we can be in whatever our fields that we may engage in, whatever it is that we want to do. And so with that, we're gonna kick it off with the first question. I remember every time we had these conversations, I'm always going to try to throw in a dose of Black history, right? Because we coming from the African American perspective, diaspora people from African backgrounds, and so we always got to try to include our culture, as we have these universal goals, right? Everybody should be trying to become the best version of themselves, but it's important that we know where we can get that inspiration, where we can look at in our history, and what are some storylines that relate to our people specifically. So as I talk about a universal topic, I'm always going to make sure to try to engage in a little bit of Black history for us, so that we can make sure that we're best articulating the record that is most appropriate, and that's most appropriate to our story, our background. So my first question is going to be, what does my best version of myself look like, and what improvements do I have to work on to become who I want to be? You have to know where you're going, and so you can start and figure out, what does my best version look like, and then we can take steps backwards. We can work our way back on that. And so you know you got to think about, what are your ideals, what are your values that you say represent you. And if you have those list of values, then you have to check against your actions, just natural everyday actions, to see if they're in alignment, or if they're not. And then we may have to do some things to realign ourselves based off of what our values are. And what we need to understand, right? It's a big, huge question about, what do we feel like we need to do um to become the best version of myself, and where do I ultimately want to end up at? And so, in order to get to that, though, it's going to take small steps, right? It's a big, huge cake and a big, huge elephant, and we're going to have to take small bites in order for us to complete it. And it's going to take time. And so, I want to introduce a concept and an idea to you that you probably already know it, but we just don't constantly think about it. And that's that small changes done over time consistently will yield big results. Again, small changes done over time consistently will yield big results. And so, what does that look like? I like to associate it with working out. I that's what I do. I try to increase my discipline by going to work out. It's hard for me to keep up with. It's something that I just start and I stop, but I know what I want my personal body goals to be. And every time I stop, I know that I'm taking away from my ability to get there and to get quicker. Y'all know how I do, man. I gotta put myself on a timer, else I will go entirely too long and we'll be here all night once I get into it. So I know that working out 3 times a week, right? Whatever I'm working on, I know that I can see those small changes done over time. But the most important thing is for me to show up. And when I show up, to dedicate my best, right? So now we can take that and we can put it into all types of different avenues and areas of our lives. Another thing that I will add to that is, Don't be afraid to incentivize yourself for accomplishing the small things consistently. You know, we when you show up to the gym, give yourself something when you get back home. Me, I I reward myself through a big meal. Um all types of things. Everybody's gonna have something, but reward yourself for the small things. It's okay to take those small wins. Remember, we're talking about what you do in your private time, right? This does not have to be shared with anyone, and you just want to focus on results and overall fulfillment. So you may have to do small things that help you to become to complete that task and to stay on that path of progression. So that's something that I think that we need to be better at, like kind of patting ourselves on the back and saying, "Hey, like this is great that we've gotten this far." Because when you don't, here's the thing: you got to recognize things and see things as opportunities and not obligations. Okay, opportunities and not obligations. And so when you see that from that perspective, it may incentivize you a little bit more to continue showing up. And the most important thing that we do is that we show up even on those days when we don't want to, right? It's okay to not want to do something, but the most important thing is that you do it despite you not wanting to maybe be there, maybe do it, because that is truly when you show dedication. Dedication is not once I feel I'm in a mood, I feel like going, but it's that consistent. We doing something every single day. There's going to be life is going to happen, and you're not going to want to do it. But that's when it's most important for you to show up, because now you're being your coach, right? You're being your coach, and you are living your higher self. Remember, I talked about that in the last series. I talked about the higher self versus the lower self. And so I think that this is a great time right now. Remember, I told you I'm gonna hit y'all with some history, African history, Black history, all of that every time. And so there is a particular object that we all know, we all see it. It's not here on this continent, but it's on the continent of Africa. We give it the misnomer of calling it the Sphinx, but the real name of it should be the Hur M Aket. And they've been referring to it as the Hur M Aket since the 18th dynasty. And so we get the Sphinx from the Greek term, which actually is representative of the strangler. So sometimes we say words, but we don't really break it down and know what we actually mean. But the Sphinx is revered by people all around the world. But what is the purpose of the Sphinx? What was the symbolism behind the Sphinx? And why did they build such a grand edifice and dedicate it towards this idea, or towards, the symbolism of the Sphinx? So let's break it down. Have we ever asked ourselves that? What does it mean? The stuff that they was building over in Egypt was not um was not for no reason at all, right? It all had purpose. Purpose, that's another important word that we're going to touch on. But the symbolism of the Hurrim Aket is that the body of the beast represents the animal nature which exists in man or woman, and the lion exemplifies the royalty and power of the divine spirit that exists in its lower physical form. The head of man symbolizes the intelligence of the mind, which must be cultivated in order to elevate the consciousness into a higher spiritual state so that it may become divine. Metaphorically speaking, it is the suppression of the lower animal nature and the refinement of the thought process that leads to the spiritual evolution of man. Spiritually speaking, it is only by conquering the beast within that one is capable of truly knowing the most high creative force. And so that definition of research came out of Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Anthony Browder, and that's on page 113. So I thought that that was deep, that what that symbol represented to our ancestors way back to over 5,000 years ago. Some people say the Sphinx is actually as old as 10,000 years because there's a water line that exists around it. And that water line, they said the last time that there was water in that particular area of land, that was had to be about 8,000, 10,000 years ago. So just imagine what that whole, if you've been to Egypt, you've been over there, just imagine what that whole vast land looked like. Now, what I will tell you is that one thing that the Arabics refer to the Sphinx as is they call it the Abu al-Hal. And so that is actually a negative reference to the Sphinx, and that means father of terror. Now, after I just read to you what the Sphinx is supposed to represent, how could then how could then somebody symbolize it or summarize it as being the father of terror? Or if you take the Greek terminology, how could you how could you call it the strangler? That's why it's important. We have to know our history so that we can add the proper representations and definitions to out to things that are symbolic and they're supposed to be um monumental, and it's supposed to be encouraging for us, right? Other people, other cultures, other civilizations may have their own meaning, and you know what? That's fine. I don't knock them for that, but we know it's not truth. But it's our responsibility to make sure that we are giving the right summaries, that we're giving the right definitions to symbols that are supposed to be empowering for us. So that's just one thing. We just talked about the Sphinx just that quickly, but you look at that, and we're talking about development of our personal selves. You can find inspiration from out of that particular monument. You can find that inspiration to know that it's important for me to cultivate my mind, so that I can have higher consciousness, which will then delve into me having a higher spiritual state. And I know that when I battle with my lower self, that doesn't come from that doesn't represent the head of man, which is on the Sphinx. That represents the lower animal nature, and it's on me to overcome the animal nature within myself in all different decision making that I may have. Right. And so every day is when you wake up, it's a constant battle between higher self and lower self. So I touched on that. So I just wanted to make sure that I gave a historical record. I touched on that last episode. I want to make sure I gave a historical record this time so we can then use that now, because once we have the information, once you learn something, you can't unlearn it, right? So now we have the information, so now we have the proper practice, and when we look at that Sphinx now, wherever we see it at, that should that should reset us and put us in a different posture once we see it, to then go ahead for whatever goal we have to move forward. So and I another thing that I got influenced by, reading different books and things. I got here on 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that I was kind of, reading from by Stephen Covey, a great book. And the other one was the 5 a.m. Club, which I thought was a great book. And in that, Stephen Covey talks about attacking. He talks about taking the initiative um, towards your goals, like life not happening to you, but you acting on life. And so I think that is highly important. It's definitely something that we need to understand, that our basic nature is to act, not to be acted upon. But we have the responsibility, and we must exercise this responsibility to make things happen. We must be in the driver's seat of our lives. So, in order for us to do that, we then have to determine like what's in our control and what isn't. Things that are in our control is becoming a better friend. As I talked about before, becoming a better partner, a family member, an employee, just seeing yourself through and making the commitments in which you said that you were going to make. It's important for us to learn a new skill in our career or the career that you want to pursue. That's on us. We have that active responsibility to do that. Minimizing the ego, and accepting that every moment presents an opportunity to learn about a new topic or about personal shortcomings. We got to get over ourselves. Sometimes our ego can be the thing that's holding us back, right? And so we have to figure out how to put our egos in check and be willing to say, hey man, I don't know. I don't know the answer to something. I don't know how to do this, but I want to figure out and I want to dedicate that time to learning and to becoming a better person. Malcolm X inspired me when I was reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. And one of the things that he talked about that really just stuck with me, right? It really stuck with me, and it changed the trajectory of my life, was that he had learning in books. And that's when I read in the passage, and he stated, as I see it today, the ability to read awoke inside of me some long dormant craving to be mentally alive. You will never catch me with a free 15 minutes in which I am not studying something I feel might be able to help the Black man. And I just really paused, and I thought about that. And I said, wow, like he was very intentional with his time. And him being intentional with his time caused him to be a voracious reader, which then gave him the words and the ability to understand the situations and approaches so that he could help liberate the minds of other people. And it came from, you got to realize, he said, I you'll never catch me with a free 15 minutes in which I am not studying something I feel might be able to help the Black man. So it wasn't even so he can walk around and just be known as being smart and everybody revere him. Everything he did was for the liberation and catering to other people. To come from that particular space is important, to realize that I have a place in this world, but I'm connected to everybody else around me, and that what I'm doing is not just for self, but it's trying to fit into a better position to help others. That's community. That's how you organize community. That's how you organize culture. Um, and so when I was talking about things that's in your control and things that's out your control, that type of idea, that type of mindset is in your control. Now it's going to take some pushing and some pulling and getting away, getting out some things that maybe tearing down that narrative, or and then making you have that ability to do that. But it's important that you recognize what's not in your control, things like traffic. You can't do anything about traffic, and you can't do anything about how people drive. Everyday tug of war, to rise above that opportunity to not let your crown fall by lowering your standards. And so you know, what are those standards that you set for yourself? You know what I'm saying? Like what did you say that you would do? And that should be tied into your ideals, and that should be tied into your values. Um, and so when you in your spare time, you need to make a list of what your values are. And that way, when you do feel yourself getting off track, when you may get pulled in a different direction, guess what? That will help you with the ability to say no. Because when you say no to other people, at the same time, you could be saying yes to yourself. And so when you have your values and alignments, you really can make that decision. Is what I'm about to go do right now going to take away from me getting closer to where it is that I want to go and what it is that I want to do. So now the next thing that you got to ask after that is, or before that actually, is what's driving your decision making? Are you reacting to people, or are you in control of your own behavior? What's, making you walk a certain way, or what's making you act a certain way? Are you being pulled by your emotions based off your reactions to what other people are doing, or are you cemented to my values? This is my brand, and this is how I represent myself. These are all things that you're just going to constantly have to realign yourself with, and constantly have to check yourself in these moments. But remember, this is all internal. This is all internal checks that you are doing in these moments when life happens, when life does happen to you, and you flipped on its head, and then you now counter that by making life happen, by making yourself happen on life, or act on life based off of what your values are. And that all of this ties into leadership. And we talk about leadership, I'm not talking about leading people, I'm talking about leading yourself. Because right, this leadership, it then ties into your life. And this creates the person that you are, and creates who you are to other people. So it's fine in the instance when you're trying to do this if you fail. Like, you always hear this: failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. That's putting too much pressure and too much weight on your shoulders. Failure is an option because it's through failure when you learn. It's through making those mistakes when you're able to figure out ways to overcome. Right? It's not about, if you're afraid to fail, then that means you won't be afraid to try, which means that you won't break out of your comfort zone. So you realize all throughout your life, one thing that has been resounding, just like dependence has been resounding in your life, failure has been resounding in your life. And you started off your life by failing a bunch of times. You first crawled before you walked. You babbled before you spoke, and you scribbled before you woke. Now it's all about mindset. In another instance, you have just think about that when you see kids, you don't tell them that they constantly failing at talking. You don't tell them, you don't say that for, especially as they're younger and they're moving up into age groups. You understand that there is a process that they must go through before they actually get it right. So you need to have that type of grace for yourself. You need to understand that whatever task you go into, anybody that was an expert in anything was once a beginner. And so we all start off at the very same point. Now, who gets further at certain tasks is dependent on who remains consistent. Consistency is key. Consistency is created through discipline. So all of this stuff ties together. So you have to ask, am I consistent? Say honestly, no, I'm not, but I'm going to do better here. What small things do you think that you can do to help increase your consistency? Remember, those small insignificant things, when done over time, yield major results. So what you think is insignificant can actually be the key, can actually be important. Remember, I talked about working out. So if I go in a gym and all I do is work out the big muscles, that's all I do. I work out the chest, I work out the quads, and I work out the back. And then I don't never spend time on the smaller tendons. I never spend time on the tendons and the shoulders that help support those bigger muscles. Then I can be thinking that's insignificant because I can't see that as a result, right? But over time, those are going to get weak and they're not going to be able to properly support the larger muscles, which means now I'm going to be more prone to injury. And so, what are the big things that you're working on and you're missing the small, little intricate things in between, which is going to lead to failure, or which is going to lead like to failure that will hurt you, right? Failure that won't help you really grow, but it will hurt you. You know, what are those things that we thinking about? Your personality, your attitude, how you see the world, your perspective. What do you spend most of your time doing? You know, there's no strategy to what it is. Like all of these things are questions that we must ask ourselves and figure out how we can change that and fix it uh to work out a little bit better for our situations. Then how can you be your own coach? You know, being your own coach is very important. We know people that we talk to outside of our counselors, coaches, mentors. So in the midst of you being around those people, how are you being all of that to yourself? Is something else we need to know. We need to know. So, are you telling yourself to keep going, stay in motion, reminding yourself just one day at a time? All these seemingly insignificant things are actually really what's important. So what have I done that I'm overlooking? So there's a quote that I came across and it says, millions of people never analyze themselves. Mentally, they are mechanical products of the factory of their environment, preoccupied with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, working and sleeping, and going here and there to be entertained. They don't know what or why they are seeking, nor why they never realize complete happiness and lasting satisfaction. By evading self analysis, people go on being robots conditioned by their environment. True self analysis is the greatest art of progress. And so, how can we make these improvements in ways where we can wake up and show up? And I think you just try to become 1% better every day. It's just like compounding interest. You put a little bit in over time, And then it starts off as this small amount, but over time it gets larger, and it gets larger, and then it gets larger. Until the next thing you know, that if you look back and you just have this huge lump sum of investment that you're able to pull from and utilize. And the thing, if you want to see it, write out where you're starting. Just start, write it out. And then at the end of the day, go back and assess, how did I dedicate my time and effort towards whatever that particular goal was for that day. And each month, it can be something new. I need to improve on my patience. I need to make improvements on my exercising. I need to incorporate a healthier meal into my day to day. Maybe today I had a healthy breakfast, average lunch, and then for dinner, I just went all out. I just said, hey, I'm going all out because I had a good breakfast. Then the next day, I went all out at breakfast, but I had a healthy lunch and I had the healthiest dinner that I could. It doesn't have to be all 3 meals. Remember, we 1% each day. That's enough to give you a little bit of room to fail, if you want to still call it failing. But it's enough as to where when you see it over there, when you analyze before you go to bed, and then you say, well, tomorrow, this is where I'm going to do better at, it gives you something measurable. And when you look back after that month, you can say, wow, look how much I've grown. Look how much, so we have to, it's not impossible to do these things, right? But you have to take it from the macro to the micro. You have to give yourself um goals that you can actually attain and where you can find these small wins at. There was something I read and it said, to make small changes as is viable, James tells us to follow the 4 laws of changing behaviors. That's to make the change obvious, attractive and easy to do, attractive, easy to do, and satisfying. So let me say that again. That's to make the change obvious, attractive, easy to do, and satisfying. That's from Atomic Habits by James Clear. So, what is one thing that you can do in your personal and professional life that if you did on a regular basis, it will make a tremendous positive difference in your life? Just think about that. What is the one thing, what one thing could you do in your personal and professional life that if you did on a regular basis will make a tremendous positive difference in your life? And so what I'm going to give you, because remember, we on this path together, we working on this together. This is you, I'm a part of your community because I'm part of the community in which we're trying to be 1% better than we were yesterday. But we have to be able to see something. We have to be able to measure it. So I'm going to give you 4 action items for the month. Some people say for the week. We 4 action items to start tomorrow. No, the month. And so here we go. Let's jot them down. Learn about something new related to Black history. Just one thing, an event, person, place, etc. You can even revisit something or someone you think you know about. For instance, Martin Luther King, right? They bombard us with Martin Luther King, but the information that they give us is not the actual, I don't think it's not the holistic information about that man, about that individual. There's a book called The Sword and the Shield. This book is one of the best books that I've read as of late, that kind of delves into both the life of Martin and Malcolm, and you will actually come to find out that they were more in alignment towards the end of their lives than adversarial as they try to paint them out to be. And so the I have a dream speech, as it's always called, which is not true, I have a dream, was inserted. It was improvised on that day. And that was because Mahalia Jackson was standing up there with him on the steps. And as he was giving his original speech, she told Martin to tell them about the dream. She said, tell him about the dream. And that's when he improvised that part of it. But there's a whole entire, 16-minute speech. But they only tell us about the I Have a Dream part. And then they name it the I Have a Dream. No, let's talk about the insufficient funds of moral equality and justice and the economics that he spoke about. Let's do that, So explore somebody, revisit somebody or something that you think you may know about, or just find one event, person, or place. And you do that every day for 30 days, mind you. This is 4 action items for the month. Secondly, identify an activity that helps to promote discipline and do something easy to accomplish and find a win for yourself. Remember, every day you're going to dedicate more energy to this particular task. Number 3, identify what you want to become better at that has not outward rewards, but that brings about some intrinsic value to you. What does my best version of myself look like? And what improvements do I have to work on to become who I want to be? And lastly, make a list. What are your top 10 values? And then I want you to look at your overall behavior and determine if your actions, not some of your actions, all of your actions align with it. And then determine what you are going to begin to eliminate to get closer to your authentic self. So remember, today's segment, episode 2, was about what did you do today become a better version of yourself. I appreciate this time with you as always. Here at House of I-10, we're trying to develop thinkers. We're trying to develop molders of opinion. We're trying to become better versions of ourselves. And so, as always, you can hit me up in the comment section. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you share the video. You can catch me on Twitter. You can catch me, I got the TikTok. You can catch me through email. I'm here with y'all. I'm excited to do this. And this is episode 2 of the Leadership and Living segment. So, hope y'all have a good night. Peace.